Hey, y'all, what's up? Appreciate everybody who is joining me or who will be joining me soon on this edition of the Better Than Less Than podcast. I know that some people may have seen the starting times and it was fluctuating because today's a long, busy day. So I appreciate everybody who is or will be joining me soon, or people who may watch the playback. Hopefully, you guys watch the playback and get into this HBCU D2 coverage. Please, if you're new here, please subscribe to the HBCU Sports YouTube channel. Follow us on all of our social platforms. Search up HBCU Sports on any of them, and you will find us there. And you can always go to hbcusports.com for all the latest news in sports. I haven't said this in a while, but I guess I got to reset the room for all of those who are new here. The Better Than Less Than podcast is about all of the D2 HBCUs. So you will hear coverage of CIAA, SIAC, and the independent HBCUs at the D2 and NAIA level. So if that's your stilo, then this is the show for you. We also have a show dedicated to the MEAC and our independent friends at the D1 level that is hosted by Chris Stevens. It's called the MEAC and More. And we have the SWAC Page podcast that is hosted by Ken Rashad, but me and Chris Stevens, regularly make appearances on that show as well to lend coverage to the SWAC. But here we are talking about our Division II and NAIA HBCUs, and we're just going to get into it. Last week's action was very eye-opening, and as you can see by the title, we have an SIAC collision course coming up this weekend as the battle of the undefeateds between Benedict and Albany State is going down. That could potentially see one of these teams clinch a spot. Well, not clinch a spot, but take one step closer to clinching a spot in the SIAC championship game. And we'll see how it was set up. First, we're going to start on the Benedict side of things. They willed their way to a 31-27 win over Edward Waters. And yeah, this Benedict remains the last remaining unbeaten team overall in HBCU football. They improved to 7-0 with this win. It did not come without its fair share of adversity. They down the stretch of the game. Well, first of all, let's talk about the moment that Benedict won this game. It was coming down toward the end of the first half. Benedict scores a touchdown with, I believe, 40 or so seconds left to take a 10-7 lead over Edward Waters. They kick it off to Edward Waters, and Edward Waters turns the ball over and gives it to Benedict on Edward Waters' 7-yard line. So it's 7 yards away from the end zone. On the very next play after the turnover, Benedict fumbles the ball, and Edward Waters returns it to Benedict's side of the field in field goal range with a chance to make it 10-10 going into halftime. They go for the field goal after going. They ran 3 plays, for no gain, and they go for the field goal as time is expiring at the end of the first half. They go for a field goal. Benedict blocks it and returns it for a touchdown and gets the extra point. So now that instead of it being a 10-10 game going into the half, it's now 17-7 Benedict. And that was the moment that Benedict won this game. It did not come without its fair share. Like I said before, it did not come without its fair share of adversity. Edward Waters started climbing back and eventually took the lead in the fourth quarter. And they and Benedict, traded touchdowns down the stretch. But it was Tristan Morgan running Benedict into scoring range in that final drive. He was huge in that final drive. Had pretty much every play in that final drive including the game-winning touchdown, to get Benedict the lead with less than 30 seconds left and eventually win the game for Benedict. So I said that after Benedict beat Fort Valley State, that they needed to be better than that. That performance against Fort Valley State was not going to cut it against this Edward Waters team, even though they had, a slip up against Kentucky State and lost very convincingly. This is an Edward Waters team that through the first 3 weeks of the season, they looked like they were going to blow all the expectations out of the water and potentially put themselves in contention for an SIAC championship berth. That's how good that offense was looking. Just big plays. Every drive there was you could expect a big play from from Edward Waters. And Benedict, they held they kept Edward Waters at bay, and they did all that needed to be done for to get this win. Shout out to boss man Ken Rashad in the chat. He said 4 seasons ago nobody would have predicted Benedict to become a football powerhouse. No, you could not have predicted that whatsoever. For those of you who are not familiar with Benedict football, prior to 2019 or 2021, when they got Chennis Berry, this team was an SIAC football team. And that's the nicest thing you could have said about Benedict, that they were an SIAC football team. That's all you could say. 2022 comes around, they go undefeated in the regular season. 23 undefeated in the regular season. They lose Chennis Berry. They have a down year, go 4-6 in the first year under Ron Dickerson. This year, they are 3 wins away from 3 out of 4 seasons being 10-0 in the regular season. That is remarkable. And this is a team that was middling. This was a team that was middling before they got Chennis Berry. 2019, they're 1-9. 2018, you go to 2018, they're 6-3. That's pretty good, but not a championship threat, because the year before they were 7-2. So you saw. So apparently you saw signs 5-6. In 2016, 2015, 0-10. So too much inconsistency from Benedict for you to even through that stretch where they're going 7-2, 6-3. There's no consistency there. Now they have gotten that consistency, and now that they look like they have found an identity under Ron Dickerson. They have completely moved away from the Chennis Berry era, and they have found their own identity under Ron Dickerson, and they are 1 win away from potentially putting themselves in great position to get an SIAC championship berth. And should they get it done, they will be in contention for a first round bye in the playoffs, which again would be the third time in 4 seasons that they will get a first round bye in the Division II playoffs. That is remarkable for a Benedict team that prior to 2019 was a SIAC team. So yeah, absolutely, we could not have predicted Benedict becoming a powerhouse. You would look at you could look at the last couple of seasons for Benedict and think that they were a powerhouse, but they absolutely weren't. They were average to below average team before the 2020s came around. So an interesting question here: are we likely to see Dickerson's name come up on the short list of other programs as head coach? I think it's difficult to say because there's a small sample size. Chennis Berry had the benefit of having Division I coaching experience. Excuse me. Before he got to Benedict. So he had that experience under his belt. His name was already out there. He had been the OC at North Carolina A&T. He had been the OC at Morgan State. He had been at Howard. He had been at Southern. So he had been around on those coaching staffs. Ron Dickerson didn't have that kind of resume before he got to well, yes, he did. Look at me talking out of turn. I apologize. I didn't do my research. Ron Dickerson absolutely has that resume. Chalk that one up for me not doing my proper research. So excuse me for that. But yeah, Ron Dickerson could absolutely have his name in some coaching conversations. If he still has that, his name is still in those circles, then he absolutely could be in some conversations for a D1 job. How soon that happens, I don't know. Will it happen this offseason? I do not know. Because at the end of the day, this is still just one season. It's an incredible season after what happened his first year. And he has a chance to potentially double his win total from last year. But Whether or not it'll parlay him to a Division I job, who knows? But anyway, back to this game between Benedict and Edward Waters. Edward Waters should not hang their head low at all. Nobody could have expected them to play as well as they did coming into this season after having that down year in 2024, and having a coaching change literally the day after SIAC Media Day. Literally having your head coach leave to become an assistant at Tennessee State. And you're an SIAC championship contender this year. Now, I get it. You got a head coach who's been around and you got an OC who has been around, so that doesn't hurt. Having Brian Jenkins Jr. and having Eric Dooley around, having those guys on your coaching staff doesn't hurt. Having Noah Biden as your quarterback does not hurt, but the fact is that they had the weight of the world against them, with Toriano Morgan leaving and having to. Now, it helps that Brian Jenkins Jr. was already on the coaching staff, so they were able, the transition, I assume, was pretty smooth compared to if you would have brought somebody from the outside in. But, what Edward Waters has done this season is remarkable. And the fact that they were a couple of plays away from winning this game is pretty remarkable, so this is nothing they should hang their hat on. And Edward Waters should be a team that you watch for in the future because they are coming. They're going to have a full off season, full spring training with the staff that they have. Well, I'm not sure if Noah Biden will be there next year. I'm pretty sure they'll have to fill in another quarterback, assuming he's gone. But yeah, they're going to have a full off season with this coaching staff, full spring training with this coaching staff. They're going to be able to assemble the talent that they want in this room and be able to develop them an entire offseason. Edward Waters is going to have to be a team that you watch out for. But we got to get to the other half of this SIAC collision course that's going on this weekend. And in that being Albany State, who did not have the prettiest game against Tuskegee in their homecoming contest. But what matters is that they got the win. They come away with a 7-3 victory over Tuskegee, and they remain unbeaten in conference play. This despite the fact that one of their star quarterback, Isaiah Knowles, has still not returned since suffering an injury in the game against Allen on September 27th, and having another quarterback go down with an injury as the Zaylen Bell was the one who came in. Jaden Kinney, who had been filling in for Isaiah Knowles after his injury, went down in this game, only threw a couple of passes, threw an interception in this game, went down with an injury in the first quarter. Zaylen Bell has to come in, and the Albany State defense really stepped up to give this team this win because the offense struggled. They struggled, just could not move the ball effectively enough. And even though they had a very good running game, the running game has been great since Isaiah Knowles has gone down, and it was no different here. Algernon Thomas had 114 on 12 carries. Tyant Weiss had 94 on 18 carries, scored a touchdown, the only touchdown of the game from either side. So, yeah, but it was the defense, and it was the defense that sealed the win. Because let me get the name of the defender who, the defensive back that caught the game-winning interception for Albany State. It was Jayshawn Wanton. So let's set it up like this. Tuskegee's offense throughout the second half moved the ball pretty well. Now, they had a lot of passing miscues. The Bryson McGrew, Tuskegee's quarterback, had a lot of opportunities. And I talked about this when I gave my takeaways from last week's slate. He had a lot of opportunities downfield, but just could not connect with the receivers. And every single time he had a receiver open downfield, he overthrew him. Now, that could be it could be, inexperience. He's really been thrown into the fire. He was not the starter coming into the season. So he's been thrown into the fire, and he's being forced to perform against one of the better teams in the SIAC, and if not the best team in the SIAC, in Albany State. But that's I still maintain that he had some makeable passes downfield. If he at least connects on one of those, they win this game. And it's evidenced by his passing totals. He was 8 of 35 passing in this game. 8 of 35. Those were his passing numbers. That's not going to cut it. You got to at least, that's past being inexperienced. I need you to at least be 40%. At least be 40%. That's not asking too much to at least be 40%. You are well below 25% with those passing numbers. And a lot of those were makeable passes. But like I said, he overthrew receivers and they were open. These are guys that had 2 or 3 steps on the defender. So they're housing it if he could connect these throws. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. And Albany State, in the end, gets the interception needed to secure the win. And they remain unbeaten in conference play. And that sets up this weekend, what you see in the thumbnail, Albany State and Benedict. The battle on the undefeated. Somebody's 0 must go, and a spot in the SIAC championship game could potentially be on the line. Imperial Nubia asked, will Albany State's QB1 be back for this game? That's a question that needs to be asked of Quinn Gray, and that's something I might have to do. I might have to I should have been reached out to Quinn Gray to see. To get an update on the status of Isaiah Knowles as soon as the injury happened. I should have been did that. So that's on me for bad reporting. But that's an interesting question that I'm not sure if Quinn Gray is going to answer before this game, but we'll see. I'm pretty sure he's going to keep it close to the hip, whether or not Isaiah Knowles is close to coming back or not. But let me say this: they need Isaiah Knowles if they want to win this game. I went into this 2-game stretch for Benedict, saying that this was going to be a tough draw for them to get to the SIAC championship game, beating 2 of the better teams, the 2 best teams they have on their schedule. But they get a win against Edward Waters, by the skin of their teeth, but they won. That's all that matters, is they won and they performed well in that win. Then now you have an Albany State team that is wounded, that is not only down to its second quarterback, they're down to their 3rd quarterback on the depth chart. So I find it difficult to see Albany State coming away with the win against this Benedict team if Isaiah Knowles is unable to play, or if just the quarterback play is not sufficient enough. So going into it, you're favoring Benedict. You have to favor Benedict because they're the healthier team, and right now they're playing better than Albany State has been. Despite how good the running game has been for Albany State, despite how good the defense was in this game against Tuskegee, from top to bottom, Benedict has the advantage. But that's why you play the game. You never know what's going to happen when they line up on Saturday. And I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to the matchup, whether Isaiah Knowles plays or not, because these are the two premier SIAC teams in the SIAC. But I will say one thing: Kentucky State is going to have to be Benedict's biggest fan, because that's their opportunity to win, to get into the SIAC championship game. If they beat Clark Atlanta and Albany State loses to Benedict, that'll get them one step closer to getting into the SIAC championship game. Of course, you would then need Albany State to lose over the last 2 weeks, one or 2 games over the last 2 weeks, and you're going to have to win went out, but Kentucky State has a chance to get into the SIAC championship game. Should Albany State lose, and because Kentucky State has the week off this weekend. So they come back on the first. They play Clark Atlanta, and they play Lane. 2 very winnable games for Kentucky State. Meanwhile, Albany State, let me go to Albany State's schedule real quick so I can lay down the scenario. Albany State, of course, this weekend they have Benedict. Then they have Savannah State, which Savannah State hasn't had the best season, but they're not an easy win by any stretch of the imagination, especially if Isaiah Knowles is unable to play. And then you got Fort Valley State, who is starting to come on a little bit after some early season struggles. So those are not gimmies for Albany State. Not saying that they're going to slip up or that they're going to lose. This is not me giving my prediction. This is just me laying out the scenario for how Kentucky State could potentially overtake Albany State if they're not able to win this game. Now, we're jumping the gun because we're not saying that Albany State's going to lose to Benedict. I'm just saying that it's going to be difficult for Albany State to get a win against Benedict if the quarterback play isn't there. Because every area has been good for Benedict so far this season. Turnovers is going to have to be ironed out going into this game, but that's about it. So, but yeah, looking forward to this matchup this weekend, Benedict and Albany State, the battle of the undefeateds, and we'll see who takes one step closer to clinching a spot in the SIAC championship game. Now, before I get to the CIAA side of things, I just want to give some high praise to a team that has really outperformed its expectations, and that's really putting it mildly. And that is Morehouse. Of all the teams that I thought I was going to be highlighting this season, I did not know it was going to be Morehouse. Morehouse, after losing their first 4 games of the season and showing some promise in some of their losses, played Edward Waters pretty tough, and the Kentucky State game was more competitive than the final score may indicate. They are on a 3-game win streak. How about Morehouse on a 3-game win streak? They overcame a 17-0 deficit against Tuskegee to come away with a win against Tuskegee. They held on after building a big lead against Central State. Central State started to come on late, but they were able to find a way to secure that win. And last week, in their homecoming contest, they come away with a 31-7 win over Lane. I am very impressed by what I've seen from Morehouse. Now, you could look at the schedule and say, Central State, Lane, those are winnable games, but they won. We've seen teams go into winnable games and lose. We got to give credit where credit is due, because we've seen Morehouse over the last couple of seasons, and you just don't go into those games thinking they can win. Last season, I believe they went 0-10 last year, or 1-9. They were 1-9 or so last year. So this is not a team that has had the best track record of winning. This is their first 3-game win streak since 21, and that eventually got to 4. And we'll see if they can get it to 4 this weekend, because they got Savannah State, and that I'm not going into that thinking that they're just dead in the water. They got a chance against Savannah State. Savannah State's a pretty good team, but I'm looking at Morehouse right now, and they're on the heater. And I got to give credit where credit is due. I was hard on Morehouse this before the start of the season, saying that I don't see a pursuit of winning from them. I don't see a sense of urgency for them. And they blocked out the noise, and they produced when it mattered. They one thing you can never say about Morehouse is that they don't play hard. No matter how much they lose by, they always play hard. And in those games where they're losing 40-0, 45-9, and all these blowout games, trust me, the score does not indicate their effort level. The effort is always there. It's just the talent level is always the differential. Is always what differentiates them from their opponents. So I want to give Morehouse their flowers. They're playing well this season. I forget their head coach's name. Terrence Mathis has his team performing at a high level, and they could potentially end this year with a winning record because their remaining schedule. I'm not gonna say it's easy by any stretch of the imagination, but they're winnable games. Savannah State. Then you got Allen for Senior Day, and then of course you got the AUC battle with them in Clark Atlanta. So I'm not saying I'm not giving my predictions, but I'm just saying that there is an opportunity for Morehouse to end this season with a winning record. And that is something that you could not have convinced me was going to happen before the start of this season. So I applaud Morehouse, but don't let this be a one-hit wonder. Continue to build, continue to recruit within the Atlanta area, the Georgia area. There's a lot. I know it's a lot of talent down there. So, and I hope that they're able to parlay this to another winning season and potentially get to the point where they're in the SIAC championship game. We could have never thought that Clark Atlanta was going to get to a SIAC championship game, but they did it. Morehouse is looking like if they get that talent in the room, that they can get their way into the SIAC championship picture one day. So that was I just wanted to quickly give Morehouse their flowers because we bad talked them. A lot of us had bad talk Morehouse in recent years, for not being good enough and just being a middling not even middling, at the bottom of the barrel program in the SIAC. They've always been known for basketball. That's what they've always been known for. But football has always left a lot to be desired, and they have looked like they look like maybe they've turned the corner. We'll see this weekend how they do against Savannah State. That game is on the road, so we'll see how that one turns out. All right, let's get to the CIAA, and we got WSU Ram Nation making some guarantees, talking about some getting ready for an upset in Charlotte. If you don't know what he is talking about Johnson C. Smith, who will go up against Winston-Salem State this weekend after putting foot all up in Shaw. Playing homecoming spoiler and coming away with a 52-0 win. I don't know what you want me to say about this game. This was domination from start to finish. Kelvin Durham was just wheeling. They were looking like Mississippi Valley State when they had Totten and Rice. They just were dominant against this Shaw defense. Brian Lane had 4 receptions for 146. Not 14. 4 receptions for 146. And then DeAndre Proctor had 6 receptions for 106. Both guys combined for all the 3 of their team's touchdowns. And yeah, Johnson C. Smith with their best performance of the season by far. And they're going to need to be at their best down the stretch of the season because they're still a game behind Fayetteville State, who will return after an idle week last weekend, and Virginia Union, who we will talk about in a second. Both the last remaining unbeaten teams in conference in the CIAA. So Johnson C. Smith, 1 game behind both of those teams. So it's imperative that they continue to win going forward. And they got Winston-Salem State this weekend. And WSU Ram Nation already talking junk, talk about Shaw won their Super Bowl against WSU. They didn't show up for the homecoming. And imagine a team putting up 52 on you at homecoming. Imagine a team putting up 52 on you and you don't score at all on your homecoming. Could never be us. Could never be me. I ain't never seen my team do that. I ain't never seen it. If it happened, in I don't know. I ain't never seen it. But yeah. So Johnson C. Smith coming into this game against Winston-Salem State with a dominant win. Fayetteville State, they after this weekend, they go into Fayetteville to play Fayetteville State. Fayetteville State returns this weekend, and they will play. Let's pull up their schedules so we can see who they play this weekend. They go up against Shaw. So Shaw trying to get their win, trying to get back in the win column, going up against Fayetteville State, and that'll be in Durham, Shaw's house. But yeah, big win for Johnson C. Smith. Dominant shutout win, the first shutout win for Maurice Flowers and a Johnson since he became head coach of Johnson C. Smith, and his second career head coaching shutout win. The first shutout win for Johnson C. Smith in well over a decade. I believe it was 2012 the last time it happened. So yeah, not much that needs to be said about this. Johnson C. Smith looking dominant ahead of their matchup against Winston-Salem State. And the other team a part of this equation, Virginia Union, looked pretty dominant itself, getting a 66-21 win over Lincoln on their homecoming, extend their homecoming win streak to 13 games. And respectively, Lincoln actually scores this time, because we've seen Virginia Union pitch some shutouts on their homecoming. They had not given up a score on their homecoming since 2019 when they played Shawan. They shut out. They had pitched shutouts against Lincoln. I believe this is the third shutout they have put up against Lincoln since 2021. Then they shut out Bluefield State and they shut out Elizabeth City State during that time frame. So yeah, Virginia Union continues its homecoming win streak, and Curtis Allen continues to be, just to me, the most dominant player in Black college football right now. Ended the game with 208 rushing yards on 24 attempts and scored 3 touchdowns. If you didn't watch my takeaways from this past last weekend slate, every single game this year, Curtis Allen has rushed for at least 100 yards and has scored at least 2 touchdowns. In every single game. In the 3 of the past 4 games, he's run for 200 and at least 2 touchdowns. Like, I basically wanted to recap this game to reiterate what I said on Monday. If Curtis Allen is not in the conversation for the Deacon Jones Trophy, and to me, he's above being in the conversation. To me, he's the leader in the conversation for the Deacon Jones Trophy. Curtis Allen, to me, is the leader in the conversation for the Deacon Jones Trophy. CIAA Player of the Year ain't nothing to talk about. Go ahead and start carving his name on the trophy right now. It's his. It's his. All due respect to Kelvin Durham. All due respect to Brian Lane. All due respect to Rasan Matthews. All due respect to those guys. They are just not on the level of Curtis Allen right now. CIAA Player of the Year, there's nothing to talk about. There's a debate for who should be the Deacon Jones Trophy winner, but for right now, for my money, give it to Curtis Allen. They absolutely have. They have shown it. Amir won it twice. Amir Hall, Bowie State quarterback. And last year, Jada Byers won it. So, and right now, Curtis Allen is looking like he should win it, and I believe he should win it. It would be a crime for Curtis Allen to not win it. That's no disrespect to Andrew Bowdy. There's no disrespect to Jacobian Morgan. If Isaiah Knowles wasn't hurt, I thought it was going to be him. But Dalen Lee has been too inconsistent for me to give him that nod. Yes, the numbers look good, but you know, he was too inconsistent at the start of the season. He's come on well to start, but Curtis Allen has been great from start to finish. From game one, he has been great. From game one, Curtis Allen has looked like the favorite to win the Deacon Jones Trophy. He just doesn't get that mention because he's playing for Virginia Union and he's playing against teams that people look at as inferior. But the numbers, just look at the numbers. 1,380, 1,380 rushing yards, 19 touchdowns through 7 games. Through 7 games. That is ridiculous. Those are video game numbers. He is on pace to shatter Jada Byers' numbers. To shatter them. And I don't mean to bring Jada Byers into this to be disrespectful. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm really trying to. That's on my face. I'm really just trying to build up Curtis Allen. Say that these numbers that he is putting up is ridiculous, and they're consistent. It's not like he got 300 here and had 40 there, or he had 200 here and 10 there. No, he's 185. 167, 108, 278, 249, 185, 208. Consistency. To me, he is number one in the conversation for the Deacon Jones Trophy. He is absolutely number one. To me, right now, there's nobody in the conversation with him right now. I know they're gonna put Andrew Body in it because he's D1 and he played well. He's played well for Alabama State, and he absolutely deserves to be mentioned. He should. Jacoby Morgan missed a couple of games, so I'm not sure if he can make up the time lost. But no, to me, it's Curtis Allen. It's Curtis Allen. CIAA Player of the Year ain't nothing to talk about. Just give him the trophy already. Don't waste everybody's time thinking that somebody else has a chance to win it. Just give it to him already. Don't even wait for the end of the season. Just go to where they play this weekend. Let me see where they play this weekend. Give me a second. Okay, they play in Richmond. Go ahead, take the trophy to Richmond. Go ahead, take it to Richmond. Do it now. Like, don't waste any time. But let's take a quick look at the CIAA standings so we can see how the rest of the CIAA championship race is going to shape out. Virginia State quietly putting itself in a position to snake away a CIAA championship berth once again. Currently 2-2. It's up against it. They have losses against Johnson C. Smith and Fayetteville State on their schedule, so they're going to need some help if they want to keep their long shot odds alive for a CIAA championship berth. But right now, Fayetteville State and Virginia Union currently 4-0 in conference. Johnson C. Smith, like I said, is a game behind both of those teams. So Johnson C. Smith really needs to win this weekend and could hope for a Shaw loss to really give them even more of an advantage next weekend when they play Fayetteville State. But yeah, Virginia State needs WSSU to beat Johnson C. Smith. They need Shaw to beat Fayetteville State to even give themselves a fighting chance to get into the conversation. And even then, it might not be enough. But there are long shot odds. Basically, if Johnson C. Smith and Fayetteville State win this weekend, Virginia State's done. They're essentially done if Fayetteville State and Johnson C. Smith win this weekend. Because the winner of Johnson C. Smith and Fayetteville State next weekend will catapult them into potentially second place, depending on the results of this weekend. So if Shaw and Winston-Salem State don't beat their respective Fayetteville State and Johnson C. Smith, then Virginia State's done. But well, I mean, Virginia State took advantage of the opportunities that were given to them last year. You got to give them credit for that. But yeah, this season has just not worked out the way that I'm assuming they thought it would. But and of course, Virginia Union is also in this equation. They go against Bowie this weekend, and Dr. Alvin Parker, I got to give him credit. You would expect this to hear this from coaches, because they especially coaches at this level. But he was very respectful of Bowie State, despite the fact that this has not been the typical Bowie State season. They're currently 1-3 in conference. Just got their first conference win of the year this past weekend against Bluefield State. Really had to hang on to get that one. But he said, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the direct quote, but basically saying that before this championship run of Virginia Union that they're on right now, Bowie was a speed bump that they had to get over. And despite the fact that they're not putting up the same numbers now, they're still Bowie. So that tells me that he still has the same respect for them, even though the results, the final scores don't indicate it. But he's going into it like that's that Bowie team that they couldn't get over. And that lets me know that we could potentially be in for a Virginia Union masterclass this weekend if they prepare like their coach talked about. Having that respect for Bowie, and get over Bluefield State next weekend, and they still gotta give over Virginia State. All right, WSU Ram Nation, go somewhere. But yeah, so the race for the CIAA championship is heating up. We'll see if Johnson C. Smith can potentially get some help from Shaw to put them in a tie with Fayetteville State going into their matchup next weekend. And we'll see if Virginia Union can continue its dominant run and complete the three-peat, the unimaginable three-peat in the CIAA. But that's going to do it here for this edition of the Better Than Less Than podcast. Appreciate WSU Ram Nation just taking over the entire chat. And I appreciate everyone who's watching along. If you can, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to HBCU Sports YouTube channel. And what was that? I just lost. I just got lost right now. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the HBCU Sports YouTube channel. Please follow us on all of our social media platforms. Search up HBCU Sports on every platform you can think of: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok. You'll find us there, and you can always go to hbcusports.com for all the latest news in HBCU sports. Until next time, I am Jared Hoffman. See you guys.